Okay, so this is graphing circles. At the very top of the page, we have the equation for a circle centered at the point HK with a radius of r is going to look like this. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So here's my circle, has a center point of HK, and then the radius, of course, from the center point to the edge of the circle is r. So if this is my first circle, I'd identify my center point as the point 1, negative 2. Now, when you plug that into the formula, you have to take into account that the formula itself has a minus sign. So when I plug the 1 in, it's going to be x minus 1 squared plus y plus 2, because it's minus 2, equals, and the radius here is 1, 2, 3, so I square that and get 9 for your first circle. My second circle I identify as a center point negative 2, 1 with a radius of 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I plug that in, it becomes x plus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals 16. And for the last one, it's centered at the origin, 0, 0. It has an r value of 6. Now, if I were to plug this in normally, it would look like this, x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals 36, but I don't need those zeros. So, most of the time you'll see it written like this, x squared plus y squared equals 36. So when you see one that looks like that, where there's nothing grouped with x and y, then you know that that is centered at the origin. So down here on the bottom, they've given us the equation and we're going to graph it. So my center point is the point. Now if I'm taking them out of the parentheses, just like all year, when I take something out of the parentheses, the sign changes. So it looks like minus 3, but I'm going to make it a positive 3. And this positive 2 becomes negative. So it's the point 3, negative 2. So there's my center point. My radius is the square root of this, so 5. And all I've got to do is count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left, 5 up, and 5 down. And then just do the best you can to graph it. I know it won't be perfect. My circles never are. As a matter of fact, they're usually really bad. Like that. Yep. But it asks me for these 4 points. So all you got to do is just, once you've counted them, is just figure out what these points are. So this is the point 8, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. 3. Alright, so on the next page, on page 5, they're just asking you to pretty much do the same thing. You've got all these circles listed and you need to identify the center point and the radius and then write the equation. And they did circle C for us, that's the snowman's head. They found the center to be negative 3, 6, right here, and it had a radius of 1. So they just plugged it into the equation. So I'll do D with you and then you can do the rest on your own. So I'm going to identify, here's D. My center point is right here. That's the center point, negative 3, 3. Has a radius of 2. So my equation is going to be x plus 3 squared, because I take that minus and plug it in as a positive, plus y minus 3 squared equals 4. Now you go ahead and do the same for E, F, and G. When I get to problem number 6, they've given me a circle with a diameter of JK and the end points, but they didn't identify the center point for me. And it says use the midpoint formula to find the coordinates of the circle's center. Now I don't know if you remember the midpoint formula or not, but one easy way to remember the midpoint formula is that it's just the average. The average of the x's and the average of the y's. Wouldn't that describe the middle? So if I'm going to average my x values, I just add negative 7 and 3 together. That's negative 4. And divide it by 2, so my x value is negative 2. And then I average my y values. 4 plus negative 2 is 2. Divided by 2 is 1. So that's my center point, the point negative 2, 1. So we've got here. And then it says use the distance formula to find the length of the radius. Well, I'm going to use instead, I'm just going to make a triangle here. And I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem and find the diameter, and then just half it. Because I think that's a little easier than remembering distance formula. So across the bottom here, I know that this is -7 and 3. So all the way across the bottom is 10. And this is down -2 and up 4. So this is 6 long. So I can do 10 squared plus 6 squared and take the square root. So that's going to be the square root of 136. Is that right? Did I add that right? Okay, when I take the square root of 136, let's see, 136 doesn't break down, or it isn't a perfect square. So I'm just going to leave it as the square root of 136, and I'll explain why. Because then I need to half that, because that gives me the whole distance, and I just need the radius squared. So now I'm going to write the equation x plus 2 squared plus y minus 1 squared equals the radius squared. So I get square root of 136, where you get 136 over 4, and then that I can simplify to 34. So that's your final answer for your equation. Anytime you get a distance for your radius, if it comes out to be a square root, don't get the decimal answer because you're going to square it anyway. All right, on the next page, on page 7, they've given you 6 different circles, and you're going to graph them on the grid. So we'll do one together, and then you can do the rest. The first one has a center point of -2, 1. So circle A. Right here I get -2, 1 is my center point and a radius of 6. So -2, 1. And then I'm going to count radius of 6 in all directions. And then draw a circle. Now that's a horrible circle, but you get the idea. You're going to do the same thing for B, C, D, E, and F. And then on the final question, they've given you the equation of the circle. They found the center point. They've asked you for the length of the radius. And then they just want you to count right, left, up, and down to get your other 4 points, P, Q, R, S. So that's pretty self-explanatory and pretty easy.